Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning into another one of our episodes. Today, while I sort of walk and talk and give you another update, I figured I'd walk along the gorge at our home spot, so at least it's a bit more entertaining for you to see. When you buy a boat, you expect challenges. Well, at least we did, but nothing prepared us for what we had to deal with on day one. You know, from those engine troubles that I talked about in the last episode to the rudder surprises, we faced some major hurdles. And here's what we didn't see coming, and here is how it's changed our plans. In our last episode, we talked about hiring 2 surveyors, one for the mechanical inspection and one for the pre-purchase survey. The mechanical inspection flagged some engine issues, which we'll get into shortly. The pre-purchase survey initially seemed fine and even included a market valuation, and unfortunately it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Literally. I learned the hard way that in New Zealand, marine surveying is a regulated industry, and the surveyor we hired wasn't registered, didn't have qualifications, and it did become a major issue for us, especially when the insurer, or the insurance company that we've sort of decided to move forward with, didn't accept the survey because it wasn't done by a registered surveyor. So that really threw a wrench in the gears for getting insurance for us. To make matters worse, the surveyor promised to video the entire process of the sea trial and his survey, and he failed to deliver that content and that documentation. And if I had known that was going to happen, I would have never engaged somebody to do that on my behalf. I would have flown over to New Zealand and be a part of that process myself. So it was pretty bummed for that to happen. During the sea trial, they noticed that the engine was running hot from the temperatures on the Yama gauges. After some investigation, the heat exchangers needed to be cleaned. They were cleaned by the owner. After the heat exchangers were cleaned, went out for another test drive or test sea trial, and the temperatures were still showing a bit high. And what we found is that those Yama temperature sensors were sort of extra pieces, and it had no connection with the actual alarm system. So the overheating temperature alarm is completely different. So we tested that and it worked fine, which was a relief. Using a heat sensing gun, thermal camera, we were able to see that the temperatures of the engines were not overheating, which is great news. So the faulty temperature sensor sending units were replaced, and sort of all hunky-dory. Next came the fuel pumps, and the last episode, I'm not sure if you remember me saying that I was going to deal with those myself. I thought this would be as simple as replacing some fuel pump seals. Whew, I was super wrong. Removing the pumps and having them reconditioned required help from a local diesel pump mechanic in Whangarei, and it was a big job and absolutely necessary. There's no way in hell that I could even sort of attempted to repair that. So, note to self, I had no idea what I was dealing with when it came to these diesel engines. So the engines that we have on our boat, they were replaced in 2015 with some Yama 39 horse diesel engines. So they're relatively new, have low hours, and with proper maintenance, they've got at least, you know, 2/3 of their life left to go. So we're pretty stoked on the engines as long as we take care of them. Now, to better understand these engines and to sort of be responsible while taking my family out on these boats, I enrolled in a full-day Royal Yacht Association approved training course at East Coast Marina in Manly, not far from where we are. And it was a game changer. I learned how to troubleshoot, maintain, and repair these types of engines, and was surprised by how simple they are once you know what you're doing. All right, well then came the rudders. So the surveyor noted that the bearings would need replacing if we plan to make a major passage soon. So from all the advice I got, that was something that I could do, which I took on. So the day that that boat became in my possession, we organized to drop those rudders and get those bearings replaced. And wow, when we dropped those rudders, it was a completely different story. Welcome to the Marsden Cove Hardstand Boatyard. Place pretty amazing. A lot of stuff going on here, which is pretty cool. It's pretty motivating to get shit done. Man, here's our rudders. So this has been leaking. It's been sitting like this for a month now. And water is just dripping out of the rudder. You can see it right here. And this aluminum shaft, we believe, is original from when the boat was made in 1992. And you can just see how it's pitted nearly all the way through this shaft. And this section here is where it's exposed to the ocean, and the bearing sits here. And you can see the salt sort of just coming out as the water pours out. And this is so worn out. When we dropped it, we actually thought that we were just replacing the bearings, and the bearings were worn out. But actually it was the shaft had sort of corroded and pitted, and that's what made that play in that video that I'm showing you now. So we got two issues. The rudder shaft is messed up, and the actual rudder itself is waterlogged, and the core, who knows how long it's been sort of taking in water. It's amazing how heavy that rudder is. So we've got new rudders being made by two different parties in Auckland. The shafts are gonna be stainless steel. It's pretty intense process. But so that's the shaft where it goes through, and it goes through the hole. And pretty much directly underneath this. That's if we need to put in an emergency tiller to control the steering, we can put the tiller through the hole and steer that way if the cables or something were ever broke. But yeah, so the shaft comes up in here, and we've got a big wheel that sort of controls that, makes it go back and forth. It's connected to stainless steel wires to the helm, so it's all happening. That crack exposing the insides of that fiberglass rudder, it had waterlogged them, delaminated them, and just made them to a point to where we couldn't get any sort of touch-up solutions or band-aid options to get us back in the water to bring this boat back to Australia. So we unfortunately were financially hit with these rudder repairs and engine fixes. Both of those completely wiped us. We had a little bit of a pillow that we were going to use to take a couple months off and learn how to sail the boat next year. And yeah, that sort of destroyed that whole plan that we had. unfortunately that dream had to be put on hold. To recover some of the costs of having to make these repairs, we had to make a tough decision, and Yama 1 came with an amazing high field dinghy. It had aluminum hull, 25 horse 4-stroke engine. It was only a couple years old. It was side console. It was rated for 6 people, so it was perfect for my family. But as much as I loved it, it was a luxury item, and it was just sitting there dangling on the back of that boat, ready to be sort of turned into cash. So I listed it for sale, and it was gone the next day. Oh, there goes the dinghy. Dang. Like our dream dinghy. Oh well. Do what you gotta do. At first I wondered if I'd priced it too low, but I was reassured that it's just a very sought after model, and the price that I had put on there was sort of reasonable. So I was sort of, you know, that gave me reassurance. But anyways, it gave us some cash to help sort of reduce the impact of these repairs. Selling a dinghy was bittersweet because it was the right move to prioritize getting that boat back in the water. Next year we'll figure out something to do for a new water car. For now, getting that boat seaworthy and back in the water is our main priority. So the entire process from day one of boat ownership has been a crash course for us. If there's one thing I've learned, it's the importance of hiring qualified registered surveyors. I also underestimated how much work an older boat like Yama 1 would need, but that's part of the adventure. Another one is that I recently started listening to a few podcasts and found out that there's boat buying brokers and consultants, which in hindsight probably would have been a good idea, since I've never owned one of these before, never bought one before, never even sailed on one before, to rely on some help from a professional. So if you're watching this video and haven't done one of these yourself or been a part of this process, I highly recommend that. So how did all this change our plans? In the last episode I mentioned we were planning to sail Yama 1 back to Australia with the help of 3 friends before cyclone season started. Unfortunately, with the issues discovered, completely derailed those plans. But that's life, right? You learn to go with the flow and focus on what you can control. I reached out to my friends, I thanked them for their willingness to help, and we canceled the trip. Now we've adjusted our plans. Instead of rushing to bring her home to Australia, we've extended our timeline and we'll be moving aboard in late January. This gives us a bit of break between the new boat life season of these videos, but in the meantime we'll be sharing our vlogs of our upcoming trip to our home in Fiji. So really hope you guys will enjoy that. So stay tuned, follow along for adventure, and please show us some love. Leave a comment, ask a question, like, subscribe, share. We appreciate your support more than you know, and we're just so stoked to see all the people that are watching our videos and subscribing to our channel. For me personally, as a father, being able to share that with my kids is just it's a super fun experience. But the more we dive into Yama 1, the more we realize how much there is to learn. But with every single step, we're getting closer to making this dream a reality. So next up, we'll show you a little bit. We've got an episode sort of breaking down why we made this decision and our mindsets. And then the next one, we'll go through the process of evaluating the current power system and upgrading it with some new solar power. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We're just getting started.